Hello everyone, welcome. Okay, if you are here because of the passport, let me see your hands. Yeah, okay, we're calling this the passport effect and I like it. I love my poets having a full room. How many of you heard about Fierce Flower before today? See, passport effect is good. So I'm going to give you a little spiel about Fierce Flower. My name is Lauren Elaine. I am the Executive Director of the Fierce Flower Poetry Center here at James Madison University. We are the nation's first academic center dedicated to Black poetry. Our mission is to celebrate, to educate, and to preserve, and to think about the legacy of Black poets, but also to support emerging poets. Dr. Joanne Gavin, who is the founder of Fierce Flower, and she's with us here in the front row. The first Fierce Flower Poetry Conference, which is how we began, was in 1994, which is to say, y'all weren't born yet. And we have been a conference since 94. There was another conference 10 years later because everybody loved the first one in 2004. And then there was another one in 2014, and I like to say the first time is an incidence, the second time it's coincidence, the third time it's a pattern, and 2024 is coming, so we are now in the realm of tradition. Every 10 years, the Fierce Flower Poetry Center convenes Black poets from around the country, and we're expanding to around the world. To come to JMU, we think about what has happened in the genre over 10 years, about legacy. We mourn the ones we've lost, we celebrate the stars among us, and we think about what's ahead for the next 10 years. It is decade-defining, historic. It was called Black Poetry Planet, and if you are going to be at JMU or close to JMU next September 18th to 21st of 2024, the fourth decade-defining Fierce Flower Conference will be happening. So, if you like tonight, I think even if you don't like tonight, it'd be wise to show up in 2024. I had the joy of meeting Ta-Nehisi Coates. I don't know if y'all know who that is, a very prominent Black writer at Howard University back in September. And we have video in the Fierce Flower archive, which I'll tell you about in a second, of him here at James Madison in 1994 at the Poetry Open Mic, okay? I showed that. This is a man who's got a MacArthur Genius Award, who's on TV all the time. He was like, oh. And the thing he said that I think was so wonderful, he said, I was 19 years old and I was dumb about a lot of things, but I knew that I shouldn't miss that conference when it was happening. And so I'm trying to get him to come back in 2024. So, you know, this is what Passport does for you too, right? You may not know some of the wonderful things that are happening here on this campus that your tuition dollars are supporting, that your amazing professors and deans and administrators are making possible, but it allows you to get a little window into what's happening here at JMU. We have brought Pulitzer Prize winners at Fierce Flower, MacArthur Geniuses, National Book Award winners, folks that, you know, are kind of fancy, kind of great at what they do, and they come here and they share their work, they talk to students, they do workshops for students, faculty, the community. It's just a wonderful opportunity, and I'm glad, whatever brought you here, that you are here this evening. I am going to introduce our, hold on, let me get it right, our Mellon Foundation Postdoctoral Fellow for Black, Global, and Diasporic Poetry. Am I good or am I good? Benga Adeshina.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, hello, hello,
How
hello.
are we feeling? Feeling good? Feeling great? I think it's just incredible that on a Thursday night, when you could be elsewhere doing all kinds of things young college students do, you are here, okay?
That's
so
smart.
Kudos to you, or even better still to your professors, who are so visionary, you know, who made you here. Alrighty, we have a very wonderful guest this evening. We're just so excited to have him. And in a few minutes, you're going to find out why we're so excited, but I'm going to introduce him to you in a minute. I mean, just look at the cover of this book. Gorgeous, right? this book is just unbelievable. The book is a baddie, right? Yeah, it's just gorgeous, alrighty. Tawanda Mulalu, who we have the opportunity of having with us, was born in Botswana, just at the tail end of the last century. The sense of what is ending, but also what is beginning, in an almost simultaneous tapestry, defines his work. In his poems, a sense of musicality, or better still, a musical procession, is sustained by a tender, eloquent voice that dreams in images. At times, you feel as if you're inside the private mind of a filmmaker whose tool and camera for image making is language. It quickly becomes clear to us as readers, as we follow the book, that Tawanda's project is out to render legible the mechanics, the physics, the brilliant weirdness, the sweet strangeness, and the ferocious yes tender leap and associations of the machine of the human man. My impression was that this is poetry as a hum of the mind. This is a kind of song the human soul makes, or at least tries to make, if only we will listen. In his chapbook of poems, Nearness, published by the New Delta Review, but more poignantly in his first full-length book of poems, Please Make Me Pretty, I Don't Want to Die. What do you say about that as title? Just make me pretty, I don't want to die. You know, published by Princeton University Press, we encounter this multiplicity of harmony and music a young poet's mind makes as it navigates the world. Yesterday, I was joking with the students we had at a poetry workshop that one thing I love about going to poetry workshops or readings led by a young poet is that you're not going there to listen to poems by Robert Frost, right? And I have nothing against Robert Frost. I'm just saying the poems are about a young mind. They are relatable to you because that mind is not so far from your own mind. This particular book is divided into 4 seasons of the year, summer, fall, winter, and spring. So that we're always in this oscillation, this swing between fall and spring, between beginnings and endings, between death and aliveness, between burials and resurrections. We're always falling, we're always rising, we're always climbing, we're always flying, just like as in the human mind. Tawanda studied psychology and English at Harvard for his undergrad and is currently in an MFA program at the Missioner Center at the University of Texas, Austin, I believe. It's been published widely, the Paris Review, the New England Review, the Harvard, this and that, just all over the world. Brito Paper, Lowell, and things like that. It's an amazing read of his poems. It talks about them in brilliant ways, so prepare your questions. We have books for you to buy and sign and posters as well. And make sure you make notes, okay? So that you can say brilliant things to your professors about this, okay? Please make welcome Tawanda Mulalu.
Thanks so much. Well, that introduction is probably more lyrical than anything I've got for you. Thank you, Binga. Before I start my own work, I hope you won't find it gauche to introduce the reading with the work of someone else, a dear friend, a Palestinian-American poet by the name of Argo Baki, and I'm reading it in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. The poem is called Craft Talk. The first image, a little girl's body pulled out the rubble. I strike from the poem, let her rest. Language is a failed state. The second image, my own body stripped and hung by my fingers, deprived of their nails, piled neatly on a nearby table. This image I keep. The poem is a space to rehearse for the future. The third image, a dictum of power, something like the state is, or the Guggenheim winning poet is. This image I soften and blur. In my weakest moments, I still succumb to the desire for prizes and avoid threatening their keepers. The fourth image, rubble alone, pulled from the mouth of my body hanging from a hook from the black sight. This image I widen so it envelops the entire page, yellow bile coating the margins. I am interested in frightening you. This is because I am frightened. I do not want to be alone. The fifth image, a drone giving birth to a child with gold leaf on its fingernails. I wipe the mucus off. I give it a name. At the edge of the poem, the baby slouches towards Jerusalem. When it crosses the border, the poem can no longer see it. This drone baby becomes an imagined condition the poem has released into the world. I do not know what it intends. I do not know what it will eat. The sixth image, my father dragged into the poem against his will again. I suspend him here with me. I revel in our togetherness. His nails join mine, our backs are cut, our eyes plucked out. The cruelty of jailers infected my language. Everything I love, I turn to cruelty. The poem now is just another cell. All I know is how to write as hurt. Inside this image, I reach out my little toe and touch the image of my father's little toe. The state is crueler than your poem could ever be. I make the poem make my father say. I'm going to switch up the set list I intended just a touch because I remember now on a college campus, I can read a poem that I wrote when I was on a college campus. I was class of 2020 and we all got kicked out of our dorm rooms and stuff because of the pandemic, so I'm going to read about that. Pokemon Blue. The virus vacated us. The campus filled with parents' cars. The plush Pokemon I ordered off Amazon. I left them in my room, fresh and emptied of me, stuffed them into a donation box. You loved Squirtle most of all. His thin, beaky grin like yours, mouthing that blue turtle as our child. You held him, pushed him off your crotch. The cleanest birth ever, you said. But his shell, there's no way you could birth a shell. Then I said my sister was sliced out wet from my mother's guts. But Squirtle could swim. He swam between us while you slept. Our pillow, I watched him while watching you. Our other children nested on my drawer. Charmander, flame-tailed lizard, and Bulbasaur, corpse lilybud. I met them years ago, thumbs sticky on my sister's Game Boy, pixels instructing me to choose one to explore a new world with. I picked Squirtle, trained them to fight other creatures, captured and collected their bodies, those entire continents of life for me to catch, each one with its own theme music. I wandered everywhere, listening. Hear music everywhere. Hear the campus yard sound the largest brass, timpani, captured from native land, built by collected slaves. Hear my room swell with shepherd flutes as if my blackness still sleeps there. Left him. We left them there. You flew home to California. I sleep in a friend's basement. Midnight. I wake from a dream where you birth a blue snail. This poem is dedicated, the poem too, but the book as a whole is dedicated to my older sister. Her name is Lulama. So I'm going to read a poem about her and my little brother Aja. My sister likes girls and does not return for my mother's 50th. Months after I hadn't had my first oyster before I came to America, my sister in Canada now, where it starts snowing soon, things I haven't seen keep popping up, movies of colonialism, and I'm such a dutiful director, serving cameras around oceans I haven't had before. Flying in, I'll ignore the masses of land knocking home. I'll wait for the next flood to take us once we finish ballooning the sun and her hot response to our earthly gassiness. I haven't seen polar bears either yet. My sister posts pictures of herself swimming through snow and the melting goes slow as it can. Every day I wake waiting for water, as if I'm still home, as if my ancestors are still praying for something as so simple as myself walking across the river here thinking, when? I'll jump into it in sheer drunken blaze. My sister had graduated. My phone's wet. My parents buzz. The leaves are red and falling now. Hadn't seen that before either. I'm always surprised by rain. My brother does not return for my mother's 50th. Egg that could but did not quite. I see you in their museums, the cold, dark African masks, your blank face. To not find you walking with me with these stolen faces, to not find you crawling up from dust. I left you landlocked of our parents, heard tides before my body, wet axes carving shore to noise. And who has ever rescued the drive home? Washed my crusted hands in what? Stubborn grains. Dried my hands with a cold towel, your little hands dried but could not hold their shores, though other grains now live between your fingers. This world will not hold little hands but turn to dust. At this party, I sip on bitter dark drink, bearing warm speeches while your body turns to airlessness. My thoughts on this glass, roundedness of your once new skull, I never saw. My flight returns to the shores, your face escapes me. This poem is called Forgiveness Rock Record, and the epitaph that I wanted for it was a broken social scene lyric from the album, also called Forgiveness Rock Record, All to All. But it's kind of expensive to get some lyrics, because that's the faster stuff. But the lyric is, you made your life on everything. And where should I find myself if not in my mother's eyes, or my father's hands, or my sister's care for the world? And if I should die because that is the way the world was designed. And what was the thing that drew me up from myself as if a river flowed upwards towards the pull of the moon? And would you not want to be a tide song called for constantly by the mere fact of rock, large, white, above, asking you to be real by virtue of movement, of its heaviness regarding movement, and to be seen as a slow tragedy of the sun's shadow? I am asking for this life to call for me. I am asking myself to call for the acceptance of this skin, its predispositions navigated keenly by eyes which aren't my own, by histories pieced and unpieced together, by various arguments of human, sometimes even of love, like watching those that were born before me decide they were this thing called human and summoned themselves. What is there beneath the rock? Is it as heavy as the rock itself? American cartoons said that the moon was made of stinky cheese. I thought marshmallows, or of another sweet I cannot recall that burst into powders of soft sugar upon biting it. Or maybe it is the cautious marble of a jawbreaker, so large that my sister and I stored them in the fridge and licked them over the curve of days leading up to some other sort of awareness. Somewhere along the line she is wronged, touched. It might have been then. I couldn't see, didn't see. She's older. I was greedy, and eventually its big sphere would soften to a pearl, its wrapping finally larger than the thing it held. Maybe, dear moon, what I am asking of you is to become the sun, or vice versa. Or why can't I sleep for as long as I used to? It's not that I don't want to be alive, he says convincingly, but that there is a calmness, a constant possibility that sleeping affords, that to be woken so early, so constantly now by my body as if he is begging me, really begging me to change my life, to not reach the age of I have wasted my life, to say to itself that I have a life, to say to others, I want to be in this world, to really be able to hear the words, I love you, and I want to be with you, and you're a good person, and people like you, and you're beautiful, and not want to instantly retreat to some question of how unlike the moon is to the sun, but how they hold one another, even if one is nearly always disappearing. Yes, that's what I wanted to hear, myself, as if I were another person in another's mouth, as if that were what it is to live. Okay, so maybe it was. Elegy. I've been down in the chameleon in my throat. He burst into a single color, predictably that lacerated into what white people have since called sincere and quite pained. And black people continued with their day, never having needed to pretend rainbows to sing. I am flooded with other people's selves, their quiet traumas, their various walking speeds across the river. I have seen someone walk on water. Nor could I blame my father for an event arising he just happened to have ejaculated me into. Nor could I blame my mother for then having characterized me as ungrateful for the invitation to this party. 90s kids be like, by the time we showed up, all the alcohol was gone. They drowned. My turn-ons include watching capital explode into non-imagination. Initially, my personal finances, yes. And now, gross domestic products, the ozone layer, democracies. It's been a good season these few years. Whereas for those without a sense of humor, the idea of skeletons pole dancing is not appealing. Whereas for those with a sense of humor, the reality of systematic death is also not appealing. Whereas I do not know upon which ground I stand, but it looks a little parched. Return to the subject of my throat with the additional question of my ownership. If I pay my taxes, do I belong to myself? Do I? You have not attempted to wave away original sin of social contract theory? I mean, all genders get along as someone else suffers for peace, says every human arrangement of tar, toil, and torture. It's a pretty skyline. In a plane that thunders towards another human arrangement, they stuff me in economy. There is always someone who works harder than me. There is always someone who is more of a morning person. There is always someone else who isn't as pretty as you. So I'm gonna read a bunch of poems about the time I was a third grade teacher assistant, which wasn't really a job I initially wanted to do, but then I ended up falling hopelessly in love with the kids that I taught, and I missed them. And they graduated from elementary school like in June, and so I'm a little morose about that because that's like the last time I could visit them and be like not weird about it because they were scattering to different elementary schools and so on. But here's a bunch of poems where the kids appear. Near it. Please, no longer the need to be harmed by colors. The streets in this continent change as easy as fingernails latching onto me when you breathe like this. Press hard. Your skin bruises easy as leaves. I watch leaves cold now, while lonely cars glide past the playground. No matter the light that flees early, I allow myself this. I amass a nest of smaller rays. The birds do their final gathering, and I am gone again, returning for the rest of this day. Here, an old tree by this fence, an old tree by this fence, by this road. Gravel intermingles above soil with newer reds revealing themselves as leaving. To beneath roots. Shall I press myself against brick? Pretend, yes, that I was here, will here, beneath feet, beneath brick, beneath leaves above you, will hear all along the mass of days in which another dry conflagration falls into this box of tissues and sanitizer. Leaves, then my kids' hands, finally quiet in the classroom. Masks. I clean their hands and think again of their minds, stumbling across mathematics. Imagine the soft marvel of another planet where other minds do not stumble, cannot marvel, cannot I, but only sing. One song, and I am the last thought on earth, the fantasy of Schubert's four hands. I am not dying. I am not immediately dying, or I do not know that I will. For the backache, the doctors scan my heart and find my right ventricle might be thicker than it should be. The left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood to the body. I am so close to safety I can confirm it now. In my chest, a dream gone, breathing. Not a snip. Da-da-da. Let's switch it off. La-di-da-di-da.
It should be a second one.
All right. Da-da-da-da. Okay, cool. I promise I can actually hit a note. This just isn't the space to do that. All right. This one was called Not a Snow Day. Please stop. Enough froth over this land, and the traffic fills with impatient radio. A radio's the only pinprick of voice nearer now than skin. A child asks to touch me, and I tell her not to. She pokes me. I swab the itchy lengths of my nostrils, and God says again, do you like it when I touch you like this? Everything familiar and awful, always, in the test tube carries me to a lab. This morning, the shower's water is careful and warm, but the air. I walked in late to school, and the same child here, waiting just outside the door, sleepy and shivering. I sanitized her hands. I teach her how to divide. American Elegy. I know no music for how a country should end. I no longer want to be pretty for you, not even for myself. If I must watch you burn while performing my own arias, then I will watch you burn with my throat. If I must sing another world to live, then my tongue arrives earlier than the final star in this brief stretch of time called a self. In the classroom today, another child practices purring. On all fours, he crawls up to me and presses his hair and ears against my leg. And it is the truest thing to happen to my skin. I move back to scold him. He laughs, and I laugh with need. I needed you, America. I needed to speak another world into my lungs. This piercing instrument of my clavicles stretched towards sunrise. They sing for you, my throat fleming from tar to tongue. Sing for you, my lips brushing yours, burning and black. I'll end with a couple of poems that have nothing to do with kids, just me being bummed out. This poem is called Song. Forgive myself for breath and I should die. Self-love an excuse, but for that exit, this daydream of me ended. Of feet parched with weight beyond the hurt of pale bathroom scale. I love this itch between thighs as slower metabolism gifts, slower moods, these dull penetrations of face into pillowcase. So die then, says another country, or lover, splits me long through thoughts of this spine, and a dream of nerve cells copying beneath this glass. How inexact to possess skin, like a flailing sack too stuffed with consciousness. I feel as a piñata, and you are peckish. Not just the promise of gunshot, but allergic itch draws blood in late summer. I'm sorry other black men died. I'm sorry I keep thinking I look like him. I'm sorry my life feels as easy as these leaves failing to defend themselves against their too soon shifting colors. But I want myself. I want to want myself as much as I want your shadows flickering against the walls of this cave, fooling me of presences beyond myself. And this music, I want this foolishness of my mouth transmuted into woodwind and brass, as if this could solve, as if this grass between my lips epistles this gray sky as any virtue but failed rain, as if peaches. I am as new as the paintings in this cave, and the same borrowing of grain into body and loss, and the same ochre and hematite, inevitable and sorry. Poem about my life mattering, written after June Jordan's poem about my rights. Asked myself this morning, and as usual, where is black life found? Surely not in an atlas, given how they call the size of the continent down as carefully managed roach control, but other nights I hear myself singing down a well, and it sounds a trumpet, or at least the mouth of Joseph trying to have a good time, you know? When the stars decided to fly tanning on Mike Pence's picket fence hair, was that black life? And should I shed myself of that chitin and decide this black self, and so grow a spine? Who must I show it to? I wouldn't recommend history either, but Black life died for me to sip high fructose liquids with less ice. No matter whose skin I wear, I can't laugh at that. A parallel history is right next door, and the neighbor's dog keeps barking my name. Vertebra. More of you. The choice between water and mud turning into water anyway. Things wash themselves is what the clouds kept saying. The stream shallows, then breaks open with new wash months later, then goes again into startled coda. Like sleep. Found another stone and it was not filled with secrets. All it wanted to say is that it's been here a long time, and that when it was larger, an even longer time then, I did not hold it, it was too heavy to even touch. In the corner of this, a child throws it across the stream, and there starts something else entirely known. When he said to me that there's something in my teeth, he called it a smile. I sounded out again and again. This is the last one I got for you. And I feel inspired to read this because, when I was an undergrad, I had people supporting my writing friends. And one of the friends who I mentioned by name in this, Sabrina Lee, she's a fiction writer, was inspirational to me and so forth. She was always writing these long-ass short stories, and I was writing these poems that barely reached the page. But she was one of the first people to take a look at this book and help me edit and structure it. And I'm hoping, assuming there's some, people who are writing or want to write here. And think of sending stuff to your friends. They're always around. That's kind of what they're there for. Secret editors, free. But also hang out with them and get drinks and all. But this one's called Good Long Poem. Was something I always wanted, because something was never working inside of me, because something is never working inside of me. I'm working now, Sabrina, at the writing the way that you might be working, but not as well, not as frequent, not with the casual viciousness of your words. Was something I always want, because of my attraction to plants. I'd like to be buried in the soil, be buried soft, be buried deep. I want to take a nap again. I always want to take a nap again. With only the minimal awareness of things such that the sun is something I might turn to, slowly. I'm a little bit vampiric. I'm into mouths. I'm into necks. I'm into singing things. I'm heavy with all sorts of muddled horns, long, hollow, cold, spittles flying all warm and solid. I'm aching with it. Please let me ache with the warmth. Please ache with the warmth with me. With something I will always want. Please let me want it with warmth. Every day is feeling like a shipwreck. I'm moored to the land in a hopeless way with kind, unnecessary energy, a shallow well, my mind's a shallow well. Bad echoes of other mouths, also muddled horns, all the muddled horns. With one girl, a flute. I miss her. Here. I'm listening to the air now, and there's no history in it. I'm a builder of large things like the wind, or something I want. I'm building a new version of history that involves us with the wind. I was walking and nearly got carried away. Air can be thick. I'm wading now in the gas. Lungs are thick. All the cognition is being the chest rising, hold, then falling. All the cognition is something I want, always. Even the plants, mouthless, are opening something like lips to their thinking. Turning now to the sun, there's snow. Turning still to the sun, here. Working not the way that you might be working, because something will never work inside of me. Placing it here with warmth, with need, with air, then brass. Thank you.
Come on now, a round of applause for Tawanda again. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. That's beautiful. That's awesome. All right, we're going to be open for questions now. You've been listening attentively, so now you show that you've been listening attentively. Okay, we're going to take questions and Tawanda's going to answer them. Who wants to be brave and start it off? I see a hand over there. I do see a hand over there. Do you want to come here? And then, tell us your name.
My name is Jonah. I noticed that you made several references to like music throughout your works. Has music been an important part of your life?
All right, that's cool. Sharing is caring. Thanks for asking that question. Nice to meet you too. Yes, music has been an important part of my life. I've always been in love with classical music in particular, and my greatest aim is to write a poem that feels as good as a symphony or a piano concerto or anything like that. Back when I was college, my freshman year in particular, I was on my mixtape grind, so none of y'all will ever hear that. Good for you. So I used to do a lot of rap, and that also informed the music of the poems. And I still listen to a lot of rap too, of course. It's just so difficult to get the meter right. I wanted something freer for myself. But yes, absolutely, music is a huge part of my work, and I think a huge part of any poet's work, at least I would hope so. Not always the case, but I think music and poetry are so interconnected for me.
Awesome. Thank you. I saw some hand. Oh, we have a question on Facebook. Can you share how you came up with the title and the cover image for this collection? This is coming from Elizabeth Hawkshaw.
Oh, yo, what's up? So I'll start with the cover image. That's a little easier to explain. So a lot of the poems are in conversation with my favorite poet, Sylvia Plath. Now, it's a contentious relationship between her and I say this as if she's alive, and we've actually met, but not really. Because she has poems where she has, I guess, a pretty violent racial imagination of black bodies and so on. And so when I began to realize this as I was growing older, my relationship with her became more complicated. And she has a particular poem called Ariel, which has the lines, nigga berries cast dark hooks, black sweet blood mouthfuls. And I've always had a dark fascination with this poem, so when I went on Wikipedia trying to understand it more, I found this cover image, this beautiful painting by this Polish artist, Władysław Kowinski. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to be the cover. I need this to be the cover. My press obliged, thank God. It was not that hard to get it. As for the title of the work, that title is from a line in one of the poems called Prayer. I think it's a poem in the fall section of the book. And one of my workshop mates suggested that, after we workshopped it, she was like, yeah, we should put that line, please make me pretty, I don't want to die, on a bunch of t-shirts. Which I found really funny, and then she suggested I make it the title of the book. I had this horrible, pretentious title for the draft, which is Phone Studies, So I'm glad she suggested that. But as for where the line came from, I don't know. I think I was feeling bummed out and homesick and confused about a very weird thing that happens, I guess, in America when I came here as like a minority and not suddenly being regarded with, I think I mentioned this earlier, having a similar experience for kind of tenderness. It hadn't occurred to me that I could not be considered as beautiful, not because I thought I was like hot shit or anything like that, but I didn't know I could be violently racialized in certain ways. So it was only until I, watched Moonlight that I was astounded that I could be seen as beautiful in that way. And I think that line came from the slow burning realization in the back of my head of what it feels like to be here and come here after being regarded with tenderness my entire life and realizing my blackness could lead to my death in a state of such profound police brutality against black people.
Thank you so much. You have a question, man?
She had a question.
Over there? All right, Edith, do you want to come to us or something?
Hi.
Yo.
So my question, I was just really moved by the poems that you had written for your siblings. My sister likes girls and does not return from my mother's 50th, and my brother does not return from my mother's 50th, if you're familiar with them. I was just really interested in some of these lines, like, as if my ancestors are still praying for something so simple, cold, dark African masks, stolen faces, landlocked with our parents, once new skulls. I was sensing a lot of this imagery, I was sensing like disconnect. And I was wondering, because they were written for your siblings, is that disconnect from your family or from like your Africanness, or am I way off base, like completely?
Well, damn. That's a good ass question. I think the things that you're saying are completely true. I think there's a certain alienation that comes with being of the diaspora. I guess in a realist way, the alienation is just like by fact of physical distance, right? I don't get to see my sister that often. For various immigration and pandemic reasons, I haven't seen my sister in person for 4 years, right? At the time I wrote that poem, it wasn't as dire, right? But what does it mean to be intimate with someone who you can't literally see on a daily basis is a question that I have on my mind. In my little brother's case, it was because he died very soon after birth. And I had this very strange intimacy of someone who I literally hadn't met. The mind being what it is, I think I associated that distant intimacy with sort of my own complicated feelings about blackness insofar as, in some sense, being born of any racial or gender category is like essentially arbitrary, because I could have been born in Germany or like Alaska or whatever, but I was born in Botswana and born black. Am I proud of that? Yes, of course. Could it have been any other way? Yes. So I think I'm sensing part of that alienation, I'm still working through it, is the realization that my life could have literally been any other way. So what does it mean to be spiritually, deeply proud of something that is in a sense historically arbitrary? Is a question I've had live on my mind. Because it's something I want to be in literary and historical continuity with other African writers and other African people. But I'm grappling with what that means also in terms of having a larger humanism or having, connections with other writers who came before me that I'm in conversation with who aren't black. I don't actually think like alienation is a good answer. It's certainly not an answer I like, but I wanted to be honest with what I was feeling, In another world, I'd be merely and simply proud and I would not question it. But I think also loving something is being honest about it, and I think this is a way of loving my blackness by being honest with what it entails both historically and, I guess pseudo-philosophically, because I'm still working it out, but yeah, I hope that helps.
Thank you. We're going to take more questions, but we have this question from online from Rachel Cooper, who says, could you envision collaboration with composers?
Is this the same Rachel from Morse? Hi, Rachel. That's an elementary school I was at. Yes, in a dream world, that would be great. I know a lot of, well, they'll have a lot of writers who like write it ready for operas and stuff, and that would be so dope. Every once in a while, you know, I walk around freestyling like I used to when I was your age, and I'm like, hey man, let's get back into mixtape season, you know, and like talk to my producer friends and try to get back there. Right now, I'm trying to sing where I'm writing with classical music pieces I like. So I did like this Ravahoki exercise where writing after Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, where I try to make the stanzas sound like the movements, which was fun. It was the first poem I've written since this thing came out. I'm pointing it, the book is no longer there on the table. As first thing that I've written since that book came out that I feel like I wouldn't resent it if it were published in the world. So I think I'm going to keep doing that.
She said yes, it was that, Rachel.
Let's go!
Alrighty, more questions because we're going to wrap it up in a minute. One last question. Executive Director Lauren Allen. To wrap it up, thank you.
So you are a young, emerging poet, not so distant from our students here. Can you talk a little bit about what made you come to poetry? And what was that journey like for you? How did you wind up inside a poem, sir?
All right, forgive the long, convoluted answer because I think this generally entails a slightly long, convoluted answer. I think the most honest response to that is my older sister. She did a lot of spoken word poems and stuff. She's also the same reason. She's also the reason I ended up doing like drama in high school and whatnot, and she can sing and play guitar and so on. So I was like, I'm gonna try like writing poems like my sister writes poems, and I wrote my first deeply terrible, you know, like lovesick poem at 14, whatever, you know. And I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Playing around with words is fun. And me and like a bunch of high school friends had like a little rap collective with some like ridiculous name, like, you know, constantly going to each other in freestyles, being like, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's what happens, right? That's, you know, that's. I swear to God, that is a line in every single like, high school playground, right? So that happened, but I think really something shifted in college. I got really into 20th century American poetry in particular. I took this like really awesome lyric poetry class with a professor named Peter Sachs when I was an undergrad. We did this like history of Western poetry, whatever, which was actually pretty great, you know. And they were just, you know, had encounters with people like Wordsworth and Bishop and so on, and I was astonished. And then we got around to the stuff that I was really into, like Plath and Murn, and that shifted things spiritually, I guess. And then I took a black poetry class, and oh hell yeah, with Professor Chester McCarthy, and that really, really also shifted things for me. Now, in terms of this project, like how I really came to it, I was bummed out during the pandemic, like really, really bummed out, and I couldn't go home. And at some point, I genuinely felt like the poems were all I had left. So I poured everything into it, pretty much everything I had. Probably not in the healthiest way, but I did. And I wanted to be honest about what I was feeling. I wanted to be honest with it. And now I don't want to write like that. I kind of want to write for fun. We'll see what that looks like. But yeah, thanks, y'all.
Thank you very much. So Tawanda is going to be signing books, signing posters with Bibles, and let us sign them. For those of you who came for Pascal event, you're going to get them stamped over there. Just be orderly, begin Bibles and get them signed. And thank you so much for coming. Please visit the Forest Flower Poetry Center.